We've got an interesting situation coming out of Rockstar, basically where they were totally slammed for, the big crunch, the sometimes 100-hour weeks and all of that. That was also coming out around the same time that many other companies were also being slammed for pretty damn similar things. But now there are talks of Rockstar actually changing things around.
Even reading through this to prepare for this video, I don't want to say I find it hard to believe, because that implies that they could be lying in some capacity, or that this is inaccurate, but it sounds like that kind of almost too good to be true. Like they've kind of taken all of the human cost of GTA 5 and went, you know what, we will take the hit. We will make a massive, massive AAA game with, zero crunch, with all of these incredible employee benefits. Obviously, they've obviously got some work on GTA 6 done before this, but it's like, we will make it take as long as it needs, and we'll see how it turns out. And I think this could be one of, for AAA, as far as that's concerned, this could be one of, the most important experiments I think they possibly could run, honestly. Because there's no game bigger. There's no game bigger, and this is going to be the test bed you need.
Yeah, if this works and GTA 6 actually just has smooth, consistent content and not a lot of bullshit, then that will, I guess, prove a fair many things.
Absolutely.
I mean, similar good things already were happening at Respawn with Apex. But to quickly run through what's actually changed, though. So one employee basically said that it felt like, an old boys club. Now it feels like a real company, which is the sort of thing that you're probably going to need to have a very large project kind of run in a way that is sustainable over the long term. And certainly the success of GTA Online proves that they essentially need to be able to deliver content like that. Morale is apparently higher than it has ever been at the studio. That's a pretty key thing. In past projects, like with GTA 5, Red Dead 2, people have been crunched really hard. That leads to burnout. That then means that your most experienced staff end up finding jobs elsewhere, meaning that now you have lost that talent. So that morale is high, probably boding very well for the company's future. Now, in terms of some of the changes, they've restructured their design department. There are changes to scheduling. They've got more producers now to actually track the development of the game. And believe me, that's an important thing. I think people outside of the industry think about producers like, what's that, just a middleman? Absolutely not. Producers are absolutely goddamn key to making sure that a project runs efficiently and smoothly, because whenever there's not a producer actually keeping things on schedule and really trying to dive into all of the shit that needs done, what you find is people, maybe they ship their thing and, maybe it's not done. The box is ticked, but maybe there's a little bit more, or maybe the scope hasn't been properly controlled. So yes, more producers, absolutely a good thing. You'd really feel that in indie, because producers one of the things you often cannot afford early on. So the lack of it you really feel, and that just leads to broad company chaos.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest example in the modern day of a producer being important is over in Final Fantasy.
Of course, yeah.
Where Yoshi P is producing FF14, directing it as well, and producing FF16. And so much of that is consistent stuff. FF16's basically done, and that's reasonably quick compared to a franchise that saw massive issues with 13 and 15. And that's all down to, well, you need almost in a PC, you can't have, there's your CPU, there's your graphics card, there's no communication whatsoever. You need a motherboard to actually make sure everything is done on time. And then that's when you can squeeze all of the efficiency out of everyone. I know that sounds a bit abusive saying to squeeze the efficiency, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Kind of, you need that. That's where quality will come from, when you have leaders and producers who are able to go, hey, we've rearranged the schedule, so you, the designer on this bit of thing, or the implementer on this bit of gameplay, you've got an extra 3 weeks to get this really super tightly polished, and we know everything we're doing. And that's the perfect example of that, and that's why the more I'm reading this, the more I'm getting excited for GTA 6, a franchise I otherwise don't give a shit about.
Yeah, it's interesting. Another thing, this is very much a unlike 343 Industries situation, and that's the conversion of contractors to full-time employees. One of the things they had in 343 is, Microsoft's rules about contractors, which meant that people would get skilled up in the project, but then they had to leave within 18 months.
Yep.
Or, be retasked to another thing within Microsoft. It was very weird. So that's going to be good, again, for ensuring that they do not lose talent, because they're going to have a lot of continuous shipping with GTA 6. They need to retain that talent. Also, the removal of several managers that basically people saw to be abusive or difficult to work with, mental health benefits, leave benefits, flexi time stuff where you can immediately take time off for every extra hour that you work, and a few more situational things. Care packages during the pandemic, some bonus stuff, I believe, as well. Also matching charity donations, stuff like that generally is going to make employees feel like the company is overall broadly supporting them and what they want to do. Also some pay gap stuff that used to be 34.4%, now it's 13.8% for Rockstar North. And another thing that they've been talking about for a while is basically saying that excessive overtime will not be required for the next GTA. Now that's a massive change, because in the past the culture was of the 7-day work week, months of mandatory 14-hour work days and work weekends. Dan Houser, creative director, had been talking of 100-hour weeks in 2018. And of course, he's been, not with the company since 2019. So those are all pretty big changes. And again, the thing with the whole crunch discussion is crunch costs a hell of a lot of stuff down the line. Now, obviously, you can get a situation like with Cyberpunk where basically the train crashes before it ships. But yeah, you can crunch out a pretty damn marvelous game like Rockstar have tended to do. But obviously, we know that the gap between Rockstar's games is pretty damn large. Evidently, there are a lot of nice-to-haves that they end up not having. It's why, perhaps, the last while it's just been GTA Online land and not really a great deal else. Now, there's been problems. There have been some problems, teething problems, right? So, some people basically finding that they have too much of a middleman-like experience. They just want to know what to do, but it feels like there's multiple people in charge. They don't really know who's making the final call. The sorts of teething problems that happen whenever a company just tries to sort of scale up its operations side, and it just takes time for that to be done well. Another good example here was ex-design director Imran Shwar, right? So several people called out bullying and abusive behavior, so he gets replaced. The thing is, though, he gets replaced by 3 people. Okay, so I guess maybe he did a lot of shit. All right, fair play. But then, this is again from one of the sources Bloomberg talked to, something that several people described as a too many cooks situation, where design decisions are just frequently left in flux or perhaps even contradict each other. Now, that's not good stuff. Some core aspects of the game, like combat, they were actually still going through changes even as developers basically expected those things to be locked down. So it is that thing. With change does come a teething period.
Yeah, that's the thing where, I hope they're willing to give it the time to get all this stuff kind of out of the way and make sure it's there, because the last thing you want is a too many cooks game. Because I think we see so much of that in AAA, where there's so, little of a creative direction. Yeah. And I think as much as, obviously, Dan Houser was clearly, was in favor of the 100-hour work week and was clearly, a lot of his attitudes were holdovers from earlier Rockstar days, it's very much there could be a bit of a miss in, losing a creative director that's kind of going to push thing and completely guide it, not themselves, of course, because obviously games are made of the people, but, there is that fear of, is it a little bit too homogenized now?
That's what
is it going to be a little bit of a problem? So hopefully they actually know what they're doing. I assume they see this and they see it in the Bloomberg report, because if they see the other stuff in the Bloomberg reports back in the day of, oh, this is a bad culture, hopefully they see this and go, okay, we need to actually sit down with the team and sort this out as well, so we know exactly kind of what we're doing. So I think that's one of the benefits of external reporting, because it's hard to see this stuff on the inside.
Yeah.
But then you see it written by Jason Schreier and go, shit, that's what our employees haven't been able to tell us.
That's what they're leaking to the press.
Yeah, so that is a little bit kind of, because I was talking about being excited earlier based on employees having more time and freedom. There is that kind of downside of, I really don't want a design by committee game. But I think GTA has strong enough a creative base already that it can't be, it'll be hard to lose it, I think. Hopefully.
It'll be hard to lose it, and if they do, it will be extremely obvious.
Yeah.
And I think, they probably know that. All of this, though, does mean that GTA 6 is still a very long way away, right? So don't expect it anytime soon. Now, one benefit, though, now that they're getting some more positive press about their work environment, well, I imagine more people will be willing to work there. They've had 70 new positions appearing within the last few weeks.
Yeah, they've went from don't work at Rockstar. That is that's basically a young man's game, in the sense of this is going to be a lot of your time. If you're any older than your young 20s without a family, don't bother. But now it's kind of a little bit different. So again, it'll be like GTA 6 will be the proof in the pudding of, will there be, will actually putting your employees first result in a better game? I sure hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. That said, there are downsides to moving slow. Because a group of designers quit from their Edinburgh office and they told colleagues that they were just sick of the lack of progress.
I suppose it is, yeah, it is a little bit risky too. Yeah, it's a little bit risky, right? You're like, because you think you have an opportunity to be in the credits for GTA 6. And I think to almost anyone in the industry, you'd be like, oh, hell yeah. But it's like, well, you'll be in the credits in GTA 6 in 6 or 7 years because it's all under wraps until then. Or however long it's going to take to come out. So if you want to like move your job, then you can't say, I worked at Rockstar doing what? Engine work for an upcoming title? I mean, people will know, but there's a difference between credited on GTA 6 versus can I have like credits on 3 other games in the meantime? That kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it's like
even
personal career development. It's just a risky move.
Even just the diversity of things you're working on.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, like working on one thing for 6 or 7 years is a hell of a lot to ask.
Oh yeah, like the famous story from, I can't remember if he published it outside of one of his books, but one of Jason Schreier's stories about the
Playground and Fable?
No, it wasn't Playground Fable. It was because you're thinking about the fact that they're doing a fantasy RPG after being racing game devs. But it was more, there's one person who was, I think he's talking about at E3, but I think he did the smoke at Call of Duty World at War. That was his job. The smoke for smoke grenades and other effects in World at War. That was literally his job. That's all he did. And then there's the more famous story of the person who did the physics for Arkham Asylum's Batman's cape.
Yeah.
So it's like, you could certainly see that be a problem in this case. Where like, what are you doing in GTA? I'm working on how suspension works in our car customization. I did that for 5 or 6 years. You can certainly see that being a problem for a developer. When you're like, people come into the industry to want to be like, I want to be creative and bring what I have to games. Make this work. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's like down into the mines.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next GTA game then. So production-wise, we've learned a little bit about the game, where basically, apparently it was going to have large chunks of North and South America.
Jesus.
At one point. But that's been drastically reduced down, actually, to being a fictionalized Miami and the sort of, outline or surrounding area.
Thank God.
Now, they're still saying, there's still more interior locations in previous GTA games, but essentially it's not this utterly insane, humongous scope. And apparently the plan right now is to just update the game over time, which is certainly something that will make sense when we think about GTA Online. That said, for me, I kind of would have liked the narrative content, right? Like, what they did for GTA 4, stuff like that. That would have been cool, but, who really knows what their plan is? But to them, what it means is adding new missions and cities on a regular basis. And basically hoping that they have a far more just robust, managed pipeline for all of this. That means they can consistently pump out that content. Which, it's like, yeah, GTA Online's, by all accounts, pretty great. But what if it got a hell of a lot more content? Certainly that would be great. I mean, what if it got another city?
Yeah,
right? Like, that would be pretty major.
Yeah, that's a thing where you can very easily see they're happy to kind of rest on their laurels a little bit. I know it's had updates, but that's like kind of like the model of, hey, we've built a sandbox, so we don't have to do anything anymore. Which is a little bit, I guess, unaspirational for a developer.
Yeah.
So the idea of like a GTA Online that's like built from the ground up to actually evolve over time. In the same way you see games that are built with evolution in mind and they kind of stick around forever. Like a couple MMOs kind of have, where like they're built around this kind of, this is the core and you'll get to have a different version of it every couple of years. And that would kill their need to ever make another, throw 10 years into the bin to make GTA 7. If they can have online that actually evolves over time.
Yeah. Now what's going to be interesting here is tone. Big thing was, GTA, satire of America. Certainly we'd always find it quite funny over here because a fair amount of laughing at what goes on over there happens anyway, right? But apparently, there's sort of a mood with the staff just saying, like, beginning to be a bit less okay with the sort of scattershot satire of GTA 5, essentially just feeling that some of it doesn't land, and bringing up a point that I think a lot of people are feeling. It's the idea that, like, how can you satirize America right now? It's already a parody of itself, in the same way people would say a character like Homer Simpson turned into a parody of himself as time went on. A good thing for a TV show that we really like, Yes Minister. Yes Prime Minister. It's a British political satire that's like really funny. And I think that's the show where they said, yeah, we couldn't really do this. Or maybe it was House of Cards, the original UK one, not the Netflix one. But whatever it was, the writers basically said, oh no, the political system's a satire of itself. We wouldn't be able to write that show now.
Oh yeah, that's...
So I wonder what that's actually going to mean, because if they do lose some of the tone that is so enjoyable about Grand Theft Auto, then it's not going to feel like GTA anymore, right? It still needs to feel like GTA, so that is going to be that's going to be the challenge. They also did say that they want to be a bit more cautious about, like, basically punching down and making jokes about marginalized groups. That apparently some of the staff said like that, in contrast to the previous games.
Yeah, they really have like a pretty major problem where culture's even so different to GTA 5's release originally.
Yeah, it really is.
So
a lot of big watershed moments have like happened.
Yeah, so it's like it'd be crazy to try and get that same type of humor today without it, you know, being treated a little bit worse or taken a little bit worse. But even like the idea of satirizing America is like, I guess. Well, I think what they do quite well, at least, is subsections, almost in the same way South Park does, where South Park will go, here's like a small subsection, a small subculture that's like America, and we will really take it to the nines and completely take the piss out of it. So it's like maybe they'll get something specifically out of their Miami setting. Same way, obviously, GTA 5, whenever it was, you know, Michael, it was very much, this is a piss take of, like, I guess, Hollywood in a bunch of ways, and that kind of LA experience. And that kind of, oh yeah, this is literally like, this feels like you're trying to make fun out of what would generally be like almost like a telenovela kind of, almost like an American EastEnders kind of script. So I think the possibility's still there. I just hope that, like, because GTA 5's edge, or GTA's edge, has always been there. So I hope they don't soften the edge, because it'd be hard to find an actual edge that people will accept.
I think a lot of the people that are very there for the narrative side, and I know this is a controversial thing, but a lot, or maybe just the more pretentious ones, I don't know. It's definitely a few people we know, they would prefer GTA 4 to 5 from a narrative point of view. So I guess, it'll be interesting to see where they go. It still has to feel like GTA. I know for satire, I have always preferred the South Park approach.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just go completely ham and take the piss out of everybody instead of just water it down so that it's completely fucking unoffensive and boring. So I hope they're able to actually, you know, hit the right mark there. But undoubtedly that's, I think, a bit harder to do in the environment that we have, right? Like, it's all very touchy. So that will be an interesting challenge for them. The other thing, apparently, so in terms of the characters you play as, obviously GTA had, I mean, usually been, at least for like the PS2 trilogy, like, you know, you played as one character like CJ. Then of course we get 3 characters in 5. Here they're basically doing a Bonnie and Clyde.
That sounds great.
So yeah, we don't know anything about one of these characters. You know, the other one is a Latina woman, but we don't know about the other characters. So that could be a pretty fun dynamic. Yeah, generally, like, I think they're pretty damn good at having, like, strong banter, like, strong inter-character, or, you know, between character dialogue, right? So,
yeah, it's that thing where
I trust them to do that well.
Yeah, because I didn't play a substantial amount of GTA 5 because it was such a massively big game that I kind of bounced off it for a bit. But even what I did experience, the character dynamics are really, really good. And everyone's like almost like it's weird. It feels like they're parodical at times, where obviously Michael is obviously this big, you know, rich middle-aged crisis, midlife crisis thing going on. Franklin's kind of trying to escape the bad parts of where he grew up, and falls under like kind of Michael's tutelage, like, oh, the son I never had kind of stuff. And that's where that was like really kind of silly at times, but also heartfelt enough in a way that you're like, yeah, I kind of feel this. So I can imagine them doing that pretty well with the Bonnie and Clyde. We can kind of get the, oh, these are vile bastards, but at the same time you kind of get what they have going on, and then you see the different perspectives and how they go about it. I could see that working pretty well.
Yeah,
definitely.
So overall, they're in a situation where they obviously do want to make GTA 6, but they're not basically half killing themselves to make it. I think they know that they are sitting atop a nice old bed of money because GTA Online performs so fantastically well for them. That means they can actually take their time. I suppose GTA 6 is going to come out maybe 15 years after GTA 5.
Maybe.
Which is like, it could sound shocking, but remember when GTA 5 came out, we were talking about it streaming assets from a hard drive on an Xbox 360.
2013, I believe.
Yeah, like that's crazy stuff. So they probably need to go slow, but also be quite ambitious if this is going to actually meet people's expectations, because the rest of the games market is obviously chugging along, doing shit while all it's happening. One thing that'll be a big asset for them, though, is that if they have a better story around their company, then they will have an easier time recruiting people. Very much different to a Blizzard-like situation where, because Blizzard let their culture stuff get out of control, obviously they then damage themselves in the jobs market. Maybe they wouldn't have had to have purchased Proletariat if their own hiring efforts had have maybe went a little bit better. Because certainly back last summer, you look at the Blizzard careers page, like, is that really going to be the place where people want to go, given all the stories that they've heard? No. So this kind of thing is like really important to what is the lifeblood of a company, and that of course is its people. So it's going to be very interesting. They were one of the first companies to be utterly slammed for some of their work environment. It seems like, though, they have actually done the work to change up those things. Apparently now morale is higher than it was in the past. The question is, how is that morale going to, I mean, ultimately for customers, how is that morale going to turn into an experience that they will enjoy?
Yeah, they've proved.
Have to wait and see.
Yeah, they've proved that you can turn your culture around. You can improve things for your employees, and that's like, that'll come at the cost at, because I mean, basically, I talked this a little bit like ages ago, but there is like basically a triangle of interests in the games industry. There's the publisher who wants the money, there's a customer who wants a good experience, and the developers who want to be able to make a good game and have like a decent, you know, life out of it. And that's like a triangle of competing things. And a lot of the time, we, the customers, are the punching bags.
Yeah.
Because the publishers and then the developers end up being punching bags a lot of the time too, as far as crunch is concerned. So it's like, will the developers taking a win here, will that eat into, say, publisher stuff in the short term, help in the long term? But the impact on the customers yet to be seen. And I think that's kind of the make or break for like the entire industry, where I'm trying not to really like exaggerate this, but I do feel like this is actually a pretty pivotal moment for AAA. GTA 6 comes out, it's a great game, everyone loves it, and Rockstar like, hey, we didn't, you know, no developers were harmed in the making of this product. And then everyone else goes, fuck, we don't have an excuse anymore.
Yeah.
Hopefully, maybe.
Because ultimately, like, look at what BioWare Magic got us.
Yeah.
Didn't get us anything good.
Yeah, well, I mean, it did for a little bit, and then the long-term effects have just been complete garbage.
Yeah. So that's what they need to avoid.
Yep.
So there you go. That's basically the situation. I mean, ultimately, if you want some single-player GTA with a story that's, you know, yeah, it's fun, but also it's got great characters, it's satirizing things that are going on, right? You listen to the radio and it's all a great time. You're just going to have to wait. You're just going to have to wait. There's no, you know, there's no Ballad of Gay Tony coming.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So yeah. I don't know, maybe in 15 years we can come back here and maybe GTA 6 will exist. Yeah,
it feels big enough to me, this kind of topic, that I remembered a very specific thing that I had to look it up to make sure I wasn't being unreasonable. But you know the phrase, may you live in interesting times?
Yeah.
Which is supposedly an ancient Chinese curse, which there's no source of it ever being. Some English person just said it one time. But I think we definitely do as far as video games are concerned. We live in very interesting times, be for good or for ill.
There are so many large changes going on in this industry.
Yeah, about time too.
So there you go. Let me know what you think. See you next time.